4 years I worked 3 jobs, my hands raw, my body aching, all to see my daughter graduate from Howard University. That day was supposed to be our victory. Instead, at her graduation party, she abandoned me for her new rich fiancé, calling me an embarrassment. She thought she was starting her perfect new life. She didn't know I was holding a secret she signed years ago. A little piece of paper that was about to bring her entire fraudulent world crashing down. Before I begin my story, let me know in the comments where you are listening from and what time it is. I just want to know, I'm not alone in this. And if you feel moved by what you hear, consider subscribing. It helps more people become aware of the reality of elder abuse. Now let me tell you what really happened. My name is Deborah Price, and for the better part of my 60 years, my life has been a mosaic of other people's leftovers. I have cleaned the offices they left messy, served the food they left half-eaten, and cared for the elderly they were too busy to visit. My hands are a testament to this life. The knuckles are swollen with arthritis, the skin permanently rough from bleach and industrial-strength cleansers. I worked 3 jobs for 25 years straight. A pre-dawn shift cleaning a downtown law office, a day shift in the noisy, steamy cafeteria of the local hospital, and weekends as a private home health aide for those in their final fragile years. I did it all with a single burning purpose that eclipsed my own exhaustion, my own deferred dreams. My daughter, Vanessa. Vanessa was my masterpiece, the beautiful life I was building out of the scraps of my own. Her father had been a good man with a weak heart that gave out far too soon, leaving me a young widow with a bright-eyed, brilliant little girl. I looked at her and saw a future far grander than my own. She would not know the back-breaking toil of my life. She would have an education, a real one. When she spoke of wanting to go to Howard University, a place that felt as distant and as luminous as a star from our small, worn-down apartment, I didn't flinch. I just took on more hours. I sold my old car and took the bus. I ate less, slept less, poured every ounce of my being and every penny of my earnings into her dream. Her acceptance letter was, to me, a sacred text, a promise of a different kind of life for our family. The cost was staggering, a mountain of debt that I chipped away at with my 3 jobs, my aching back and my unwavering love. When she'd call home from college, her voice full of new ideas, new words, a new sophisticated accent that was miles away from my own simple speech, my heart would swell with a pride so fierce it almost hurt. This was what my sacrifice was for. But there was a pragmatic side to me too. I wanted her to understand the weight of this gift. When she started her freshman year, I sat her down with the financial aid documents and my own carefully compiled ledger of what her tuition would cost. "Vanessa, honey," I'd said gently, "I will pay for every single cent of this. That is my gift to you. But this is a partnership. I want you to sign a document with me. It's not about me ever collecting this money from you. It's a promissory note, a student loan, just between us. So you always remember the value of what we are both working towards. So you understand it's not just a free ride." She had signed it readily enough, with a roll of her eyes and a "whatever you say, Mama," likely seeing it as one of my old-fashioned quirks. She had no idea that this simple act of teaching her responsibility would one day become my only weapon. Over the years, especially when she started bringing home friends from wealthy families, I noticed a subtle shift. A new, almost imperceptible shame she seemed to have for me for our humble apartment. She'd stop bringing friends over, suggesting we meet at a cafe instead. Her calls, once full of details of her life, became more guarded. But I told myself it was natural. She was growing up, building her own world, a world I had so desperately wanted for her. Her graduation day was the proudest moment of my life. I sat in the vast auditorium at Howard, my cheap dress feeling out of place amidst the silks and linens of the other parents, but my heart was soaring. My daughter. A lawyer. A woman of substance. I had done it. My life's work was complete. After graduation, she met Sterling Maxwell. He was everything I could have ever dreamed of for her on paper. 35, handsome, from a very respectable family, and already a successful architect with his own firm. He was kind, principled, and utterly smitten with Vanessa. They got engaged quickly. And that's when my daughter, my brilliant, educated daughter, began the slow, cruel process of erasing me from her new, perfect life. The celebration for Vanessa's graduation from law school and her recent engagement to Sterling Maxwell was not the small, intimate family gathering I had envisioned. It was a grand, catered affair held in the rooftop ballroom of a chic downtown hotel, A place with panoramic city views and champagne that cost more per bottle than I made in a week. It was a world away from my life of bleach and bus schedules. It was Vanessa's new world, and Sterling, her generous and clearly wealthy fiancé, was happy to provide it. I wore my absolute best Sunday dress, a simple navy blue silk I'd had for years and a string of my mother's pearls. Still, I felt like a sparrow that had accidentally flown into a peacock enclosure. The room was filled with Sterling's friends and family, doctors, lawyers, judges, all of them exuding an air of effortless success. Vanessa, my Vanessa, moved among them with a practiced grace, her accent now entirely stripped of its homegrown roots, her laughter a little too loud, a little too brittle. She was performing, playing the part of a woman who had always belonged in such circles. She introduced me to a few of Sterling's colleagues with a quick, almost dismissive, "This is my mother, Deborah." Their smiles were polite but fleeting, their eyes quickly scanning past me, the unassuming old woman in the simple dress, to find someone more important to talk to. I felt a familiar pang of being an outsider, but I pushed it down, reminding myself that this was for Vanessa. This was her triumph. Sterling at least was kind. He made a point of coming over, his hand warm on my arm. "Deborah," he said, his voice genuine, "I am so glad you're here. Vanessa has told me so much about the sacrifices you made for her. You must be incredibly proud." "I am, Sterling," I said, my heart warming at his words. "Very proud. Perhaps I had misjudged. Perhaps this new life wouldn't erase me after all." But then came the moment that shattered everything. It was time for the toasts. Sterling spoke first, his words full of love and admiration for Vanessa's brilliance and determination. Then Vanessa stood, her champagne flute held high. She was beaming, a vision in a silk dress that shimmered under the ballroom lights. She thanked Sterling, his family, her professors. Then she turned her gaze towards me, where I sat at a small table with a few of her old high school friends she'd felt obligated to invite. "And of course," she began, a strange tight smile on her face, "I have to thank my mother." My heart swelled. This was it. A public acknowledgement of my years of sacrifice. "My mother," Vanessa continued, her voice taking on a tone of performative, patronizing sweetness, "who always believed in me in her own simple way. She taught me the value of hard work." She paused, letting the implication hang in the air. The implication that my kind of work, scrubbing, cleaning, serving, was something to be pitied, something she had thankfully transcended. "And now," she said, her smile widening as she turned to her new fiancé, "I have Sterling, who will ensure I never have to know that kind of struggle. A man who will give me the life I was always meant to have." She then turned her attention fully to a distinguished-looking older man at Sterling's table, a man I later learned was his father, a prominent judge. "Mr. Maxwell," she said, her voice full of a sudden girlish enthusiasm, "I simply cannot wait to be your daughter. To finally have the kind of family I've always dreamed of." It was a public disownment delivered with a smile. She had in one fell swoop dismissed my entire life of sacrifice as a prelude to her real life and replaced me, her mother, with her new powerful in-laws. The crowd, sensing the subtle cruelty, offered a smattering of polite, uncertain applause. But the final devastating blow came just after the toasts. As Vanessa was mingling, a triumphant queen in her new court, she approached my table, Sterling by her side. "Mom," she said, her voice now a low, urgent whisper, "Sterling and I are going to be joining his parents at their table for the rest of the evening, to discuss wedding plans." She glanced at my small table, at my simple friends. "I'm sure you understand. It's a different world." And then the final twist of the knife. "Listen," she continued, her voice dropping even lower, I can't have you at the head table at the wedding. The Maxwells, they have a certain standard. And you wouldn't be comfortable. And frankly," she gave a small, brittle laugh, "it would be an embarrassment. But don't worry, we'll find a nice, quiet spot for you." I stared at her, my vision blurring, my heart a cold, dead weight in my chest. Embarrassment. My daughter, the one whose future I had funded with my own blood, sweat, and tears, the one for whom I had scrubbed toilets and endured endless nights of backbreaking labor, had just told me, on the day of her greatest triumph, that I was an embarrassment. That I was not good enough for her new life. She then turned to Sterling, her face a mask of loving devotion again. "Shall we go, darling?" As they walked away, leaving me there amidst the wreckage of my maternal heart. I knew. The dream was over. The sacrifice had been for nothing. She hadn't just moved on to a new life. She had deliberately, publicly, and cruelly abandoned me at the finish line. The love I had for her, so unconditional, so all-consuming, curdled into something else, something cold and hard and terribly clear. My daughter was gone. And in her place was a stranger I no longer owed anything. The drive home from the graduation party was a silent one. My old friend Janice, who had been at my table, had insisted on driving me, her hand resting on my arm in a gesture of unspoken solidarity. She had heard it all. The condescending tribute, the casual dismissal of my life's work, the chilling finality in Vanessa's voice as she cast me aside for her new wealthy family. We didn't speak of it. We didn't have to. The air was thick with the shame of it, a shame that felt like it was clinging to my skin, to my nice navy dress, to my very soul. When I stepped into my small, quiet apartment, the silence that greeted me was different from the usual peace I found there. It was a hollow, echoing silence, a void where my pride and joy had once been. The small, framed photos of Vanessa on my mantelpiece, her gap-toothed school picture, her high school graduation, her beaming face on the day she was accepted to Howard, now seemed to mock me. They were relics of a daughter who no longer existed, a mother's dream that had become a waking nightmare. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my worn armchair, the one with the permanent imprint of my weary body, and replayed the evening's events over and over. Each word from Vanessa was a fresh stab wound. Her casual cruelty, her public disownment, her easy dismissal of my decades of sacrifice. She hadn't just abandoned me. She had negated me, rendered my entire life, my entire purpose, as nothing more than a grimy stepping stone she had now wiped from her expensive new shoes. The heartbreak was a physical thing, a crushing weight on my chest. But as the first gray light of dawn began to seep through my window, something else began to stir within that devastated landscape. It was the slow, creeping return of my own self. The Deborah Price who, before pouring her entire being into Vanessa, had been a woman of pride, of strength, of quiet intelligence. The woman who had managed to raise a child alone, to navigate a world that was not always kind, to keep her head held high despite the endless toil. And with that returning sense of self came a cold, clarifying anger. How dare she? How dare she take my life's work, the very health I had sacrificed, and then discard me like so much trash because I no longer fit her aesthetic? How dare she stand there, draped in the success I had paid for with my own aching bones, and call me an embarrassment? The thought of her marrying into that wealthy family, of her gliding through life on the foundation of my sacrifice while I was left to fade into obscurity, a forgotten anecdote from her humble beginnings, was an injustice I would not abide. I had always thought my love for her was my greatest strength. Now I realized my greatest strength was the pragmatism I had so often suppressed for her sake. I went to the old metal filing cabinet in my small spare bedroom, the one where I kept all my important documents. My fingers, stiff with a new kind of resolve, searched past old tax returns and appliance warranties until they found it. A thick manila folder labeled simply Vanessa HU Tuition. Inside was every receipt, every bank statement, every canceled check from the past 6 years. A meticulous, undeniable paper trail of my sacrifice. And tucked in the very back, a document I hadn't looked at since the day it was signed. It was the student loan agreement. The promissory note. I had insisted on it when she started at Howard, not out of distrust but as a teaching tool. So you always remember the value of this, honey, I had told her. So you understand it's a real investment. She had signed it with a teenager's casual indifference, likely forgetting its existence the moment she walked out the door. But I hadn't. It was a legally binding document, drafted by a no-fee legal aid service at the time, promising repayment of the full tuition amount upon her securing gainful employment, with the unwritten, motherly understanding that I would, of course, forgive the loan as my graduation gift to her. But she had just publicly, cruelly rejected that gift. She had rejected the mother who gave it. And in doing so she had rendered our unspoken agreement null and void. What remained was the cold, hard text on the page. A debt. A significant, legally enforceable debt. I held the document in my hands, its weight feeling far more substantial than just a few sheets of paper. This was my power. This was my voice. This was the payback she had so carelessly, so arrogantly just handed to me. My plan began to form, not in a rush of hot-headed anger, but with a cold, calculated precision. She was engaged to a wealthy, principled man, Sterling Maxwell. A man who, in his brief, kind interaction with me, had shown respect for my sacrifice. A man who was about to legally and financially bind himself to a woman who was carrying a massive, undisclosed liability. A woman whose entire glittering facade was built on a foundation of lies and her mother's hidden financial servitude. Sterling Maxwell, I realized, was not the enemy. He was the key. He was a man who valued integrity. And I was about to present him with a truth about his future bride that would be impossible to ignore. I would not scream, I would not make a scene. I would simply present the facts, the cold, hard numbers of my sacrifice, and let him, a man of his world, be the judge. The time for tears was over. The time for being the quiet, long-suffering mother was over. My daughter had abandoned me at her graduation party. But my final lesson for her, a lesson in consequences, in gratitude, in truth, was just about to begin. The days following the party were a study in silence. Vanessa did not call. Not to apologize, not to explain, not even to check if her public humiliation had sent her old mother into a health crisis. Her silence was its own brutal message. She had made her choice, she had ascended to her new world with Sterling Maxwell, and I was now a part of the past she was actively shedding. The coldness of it was breathtaking, but it only served to harden my resolve. My first step was not to lash out but to research. My pragmatism, the same quality that allowed me to manage 3 jobs and a household, taught me the value of understanding the terrain before planning a course of action. I spent 2 full days at the public library, using their computers to learn everything I could about Sterling Maxwell. He wasn't just wealthy. He was from a respected family known for its philanthropy and its old money emphasis on integrity. His architectural firm was lauded not just for its innovative designs, but for its ethical practices. He sat on the board of 2 major city charities. He was, by all accounts, a man who valued character. This was good. This was very, very good. He was also, I discovered, intensely private. Gaining a direct audience with a man like him would not be easy. A frantic, emotional phone call from his fiancé's embarrassing mother would be swiftly intercepted and dismissed by a gatekeeping secretary. A desperate, rambling letter would likely end up in a slush pile. My approach had to be as professional, as polished, as undeniable as the man himself. It had to speak his language. The language of business, of liabilities, of due diligence. I returned to my small apartment and began to draft my correspondence. Not a letter of pain, but a formal, almost clinical business inquiry. I used the old, heavy cream stationery I had saved for special occasions, the irony of it not lost on me. My handwriting, usually a little shaky these days, was surprisingly firm, each letter formed with a cold, deliberate precision. The letter was addressed directly to Mr. Sterling Maxwell at his firm's downtown office. "Dear Mr. Maxwell," it began, "please forgive the unsolicited nature of this correspondence. I am writing to you regarding a matter of significant financial importance concerning your fiancée, Ms. Vanessa Price. As you prepare to merge your lives and your finances, I believe it is incumbent upon me, as a party to a pre-existing and substantial financial agreement with Ms. Price, to ensure you are made aware of certain undisclosed liabilities she will be bringing into your union. This is a matter of professional courtesy and legal necessity. I would be grateful for the opportunity to discuss this with you privately at your earliest convenience, and to present the relevant documentation. I can be reached at the number below. Sincerely, Deborah Price." I didn't mention I was her mother. I didn't mention my hurt feelings, her cruelty, the graduation party. I framed it purely as a business matter, a legal obligation. I used words I knew a man like him would understand and could not ignore: significant financial importance, undisclosed liabilities, pre-existing agreement, documentation. I knew that for a man of his stature on the brink of marriage, the suggestion of a hidden financial entanglement involving his fiancée would be a red flag of the highest order, one he would be compelled to investigate. I sent the letter via a registered courier, the kind that requires a signature upon receipt, ensuring it would land directly in his hands, not be filtered out by an assistant. Then I waited. The wait was agonizing. For 3 days my phone was silent. I began to doubt myself. Had I been too bold? Too formal? Had he simply dismissed my letter as the work of a crank? Then on the 4th day my phone rang. An unknown number with a downtown exchange. "May I speak with Deborah Price?" a crisp, professional female voice asked. "This is she," I replied, my heart leaping into my throat. "Please hold for Mr. Sterling Maxwell." The line clicked, and then his voice, smooth and calm, came on the line. "Mrs. Price? This is Sterling Maxwell. I received your letter. You've certainly piqued my curiosity. And I admit my concern." His tone was not hostile but cautious, analytical. "You mentioned a significant financial agreement with my fiancé. I was not aware of any such arrangement." "I am aware of that, Mr. Maxwell," I said, my own voice calm. "That is why I am calling." "You also mentioned documentation," he said. "What kind of documentation are we talking about?" "A legally binding promissory note, Mr. Maxwell," I replied. "Signed by Vanessa, for a substantial sum that I provided for her complete law school education at Howard University." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could almost hear the gears turning in his sharp, intelligent mind. He was likely re-evaluating everything Vanessa had ever told him about her modest but independent background, her scholarships, her struggle. "I see," he said finally, his voice now holding a new, colder edge. "Mrs. Price, who exactly are you to my fiancé?" I took a deep breath. "I am Deborah Price," I said. "I am the woman who worked 3 jobs scrubbing floors and cleaning toilets for 6 years to provide her with that education. I am her mother." The silence on the other end of the line was absolute, profound. I had laid my trap with a single, devastating truth. Now he would have to decide what to do with it. "My office," he said at last, his voice tight. "Tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock. Bring your documentation." He hung up. I sat there, the phone still pressed to my ear, a wave of cold triumph washing over me. He would see me. I had breached the fortress. The embarrassing mother, the woman too common for their new world, had just secured a private audience with the very man her daughter had abandoned her for. And I would be bringing receipts. I arrived at Sterling Maxwell's architectural firm at precisely 10 o'clock the next morning. It was a world of hushed elegance, of glass walls, polished concrete floors, and stunning models of futuristic buildings. The receptionist, a young woman with an impeccable demeanor, recognized my name immediately and ushered me into a large, sunlit conference room with a view that seemed to encompass the entire city. Sterling was already there, standing by the window, his back to me. He turned as I entered, his face a carefully composed mask of professional neutrality, but his eyes held a deep, questioning intensity. "Mrs. Price," he said, his voice calm, gesturing to a large mahogany table. "Thank you for coming. Please have a seat." I sat, placing my worn handbag on the floor beside me. From it, I took a simple manila folder. My hands were surprisingly steady. I was not here as a supplicant, nor as a scorned mother seeking pity. I was here as a creditor, a party to a legal agreement. He sat opposite me. "Before you show me anything," he began, his gaze direct, "I want to be clear. Vanessa is the woman I intend to marry. But I am also a man who believes in clarity. Your letter and your statement on the phone that you are her mother have created a significant lack of clarity. I am here to provide it, Mr. Maxwell," I said, my voice even. I opened the folder. I didn't begin with the promissory note. I began with the evidence of my sacrifice. I laid out the bank statements from over the years, with my own handwritten notes in the margins, showing the direct transfers to Howard University's tuition office. I showed him the receipts for her textbooks, for her dorm fees, for the plane tickets home on holidays. I showed him my own employment records from the cleaning companies, the paltry pay stubs that represented endless nights of backbreaking labor. "This," I said quietly, "is what it costs to make your fiancé a lawyer." He looked at the documents in silence, his usual confident demeanor slowly being replaced by a look of stunned disbelief. He was a man of wealth. He likely had no concept of the kind of grinding, relentless toil these papers represented. He picked up a pay stub, looked at the meager hourly wage, then at the tuition receipt for tens of thousands of dollars, and I saw him do the grim math in his head. She told me she was on a full academic scholarship," he said, his voice a low murmur, more to himself than to me. "She was an excellent student," I replied. "But her scholarships covered less than a third of the cost. I covered the rest. Every single penny." Then I slid the final document across the polished table. The promissory note. Signed by Vanessa Price 6 years ago, legally drafted, promising repayment of the full sum of her educational costs upon her securing employment. He read it carefully, his eyes lingering on her looping, confident signature. He looked up at me, his expression now one of profound, dawning horror. "This is a legally binding document," he stated, a fact, not a question. "Yes," I said. "It is." "And you are now calling in this debt?" "No, Mr. Maxwell," I said, and this was the most important part of my plan. "I am not. For 6 years, this document was a symbol of my love, my gift to her. My intention was always to tear it up on her graduation day, my final present to my brilliant, successful daughter." I paused, letting the weight of my words settle in the silent room. "But on the day of her graduation party, the one you so generously hosted, she informed me that I, her mother, was an embarrassment, and would not be welcome at the head table at her wedding because I did not meet the standard of your family." Sterling flinched as if I had struck him. "She abandoned me at that party," I continued, my voice quiet, unwavering. "For you. For this new life. She disowned me, my life, my sacrifices in front of everyone. And in doing so, Mr. Maxwell, she voided the spirit of our agreement. The gift was rejected. What remains is simply the debt." I leaned forward slightly. "I am not here to ask you for money. I am not here to demand repayment today. I am here as a matter of due diligence, as I said in my letter. Because I believe a man of your stature, a man of principle, has a right to know the true character of the woman he is about to marry. A woman who would allow her mother to scrub toilets to fund her ambition, and then cast that mother aside as an embarrassment the moment a wealthier prospect appeared. A woman who is entering your marriage with a significant, legally binding debt she has kept hidden from you. A woman who is, in short, a liar." He was silent for a very long time, staring at the promissory note on the table between us. His face was pale, his composure shattered. The brilliant, ambitious lawyer he was engaged to, the woman he had put on a pedestal, had been revealed to be a cruel, ungrateful fraud. And the proof was right there in her own handwriting. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention, Mrs. Price," he said finally, his voice hoarse. He slid the documents back into the folder and pushed it gently towards me. "You have given me a great deal to consider." He stood, a clear dismissal. I stood as well, my mission accomplished. I had not screamed, I had not cried, I had not begged. I had simply presented the truth, calmly and professionally. I had laid bare the foundation of Vanessa's success, and the rotten character she had built upon it. As I walked out of that conference room, out of that gleaming tower of wealth and power, I felt a profound sense of peace. The outcome was now out of my hands. It was up to Sterling Maxwell, a man of principle, to decide if a woman with such a character, with such a capacity for cruelty and deceit, was truly the person he wanted to build his future with. The seeds of truth had been planted. Now all I had to do was wait and watch the fireworks I knew were sure to follow. The days following my meeting with Sterling Maxwell were a strange, quiet purgatory. I had fired my shot, delivered my devastating truth, and now I could do nothing but wait for the inevitable explosion. I went about my routine, my cleaning jobs, my quiet evenings with a book, but my mind was constantly on edge, waiting for the phone to ring, waiting for the fallout from the bomb I had so carefully planted in the heart of my daughter's new, glittering life. The first sign that the fuse had been lit came not from Vanessa or Sterling, but from Sterling's father, the retired judge whom Vanessa had been so desperate to impress. He called me. His voice was grave, dignified, and filled with a profound, almost formal apology. "Mrs. Price," he began, "Sterling has made me aware of the situation, of the documents you presented. On behalf of my family, I want to express our deepest regret for the distress this has caused you, and our immense respect for the sacrifices you made for your daughter. Such character is a rare and admirable thing." He paused. "And its absence is a profound disappointment." He said little more, but his meaning was clear. The Maxwell family, a family that valued integrity above all, now saw Vanessa for who she truly was. The main explosion came a week later. It was a Saturday afternoon. My doorbell rang, a series of sharp, frantic jabs. It was Vanessa. I had not seen her since the graduation party. She looked like a woman undone. Her usually impeccable hair was disheveled, her expensive clothes looked thrown on, Her face was pale and blotchy with tears and rage. "How could you?" she shrieked the moment I opened the door, pushing past me into my small living room. "How could you go to him? You went behind my back to my fiancé and tried to ruin my life." "Your life, Vanessa?" I replied, my voice calm, my heart strangely steady. "I believe I was merely providing your fiancé with some pertinent financial information he was entitled to before entering into a marriage. Full disclosure. Isn't that something you lawyers value? Don't you dare play games with me," she spat, her hands clenched into fists. He confronted me. "With that stupid paper. That was a gift. Promise. Not a weapon." "You turned it into a weapon, Vanessa," I said quietly. "When you chose to abandon me, when you chose to call me an embarrassment after I had spent years scrubbing floors so you could have your dream. You rejected the gift. All that was left was the debt." He's questioning everything," she cried, her rage now giving way to a raw panic I had never seen in her before. "He's asking about my scholarships, about how I afforded my apartment, about everything. You've poisoned him against me. He looked at me last night and said, 'Who are you, Vanessa?' And what did you tell him?" I asked, my gaze unwavering. Her face crumpled. "I told him you were a bitter, lying old woman. I told him you were jealous of my happiness." "And did he believe you?" Her silence was my answer. Sterling Maxwell was a man of principle, a man who dealt in facts. And I had given him the facts. "You have ruined everything," she sobbed, sinking onto my sofa. "Everything. We were going to be married, we were going to be happy, we were going to be powerful. And you, with your pathetic little promissory note, you destroyed it all." "No, Vanessa," I said softly, looking at the daughter I had loved so dearly, now a stranger consumed by her own selfish choices. "I didn't destroy it. You did. You destroyed it on your graduation day when you looked at me and felt shame instead of gratitude. You destroyed it when you decided my love was a currency you had already spent. The life you were building with Sterling was a beautiful house built on a rotten foundation of lies. It was always going to collapse. I just pointed out the cracks." She left soon after, her threats and sobs eventually dissolving into a defeated, resentful silence. 2 weeks later, the official announcement appeared in the society pages of the city newspaper. A small, discreet notice. "The engagement of Mr. Sterling Maxwell and Ms. Vanessa Price has been mutually dissolved." Mutually. Polite fiction, I was sure. Vanessa's downfall was swift. Without Sterling's financial backing and social standing, her glittering world vanished. She lost the fancy apartment, the expensive car, the circle of influential friends. And she was now faced with a legally binding debt to me, a debt that would follow her for years. I instructed my lawyer to arrange a manageable but unyielding repayment plan. Every month, a portion of her salary from whatever new, less glamorous job she would have to find, would be transferred to my account. It wasn't about the money. It was about the principle. A monthly reminder of the sacrifices she had scorned. I felt a profound aching sadness for the daughter I had lost. But I also felt a quiet, steely pride in the woman I had rediscovered within myself. The woman who had refused to be erased. One day I took out the promissory note, that simple piece of paper that had become the instrument of my reclamation. I looked at Vanessa's looping, confident signature. Then with a steady hand I lit a match and let the flame consume it, turning the record of her debt into ash. My payback was never about the money. My payback was the lesson. And as I watched the last ember die, I knew with a certainty that settled deep in my soul, that she would carry the weight of that lesson for the rest of her life. My work finally was done.